Ukraine. Let's start there. I am of the I'm in the news, I guess I don't want to call this nuance, it sounds self-praising, but the complicated position that of course we can't tolerate Putin's violation of international borders. But nor can we continue this war forever without serious damage, that there's cost to this in Europe as a whole and the world as a whole that will at some point reach a critical moment where people are going to say, why are we freezing to death because of the Donbass, which we never heard of until 6 months ago? What's going to be, how does this end, Fareed? Let's just think about it. How does it end?
So let me start by telling you why I'm a little bit more tough-minded about this than you, because I do think we're at a really extraordinary moment where the international system that really has been built by the United States since the end of World War II, that is really a remarkable system that has achieved more peace and stability and prosperity than any 75-year stretch of history that you can look at, literally in human history, including the Roman Empire, and a period when you've had not just, no great power wars, no massive annexations by force, none of that. You've allowed for the creation of a larger global economy that has, as you say, lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. All these things have been managed. It's not perfect, but hell of a lot better than anything we've had before. We are moving into a very fundamental transition because that system was largely built on American power. At the end of the day, the US was the guarantor. So, you look at something like nuclear nonproliferation. The reason we have had so little nuclear nonproliferation is not because everybody signed an NPT treaty. It's because the power of the United States to say, if you do this, there will be a lot of sticks and that will come your way, and there will be a lot of carrots withheld. And we were powerful enough that mattered. Well, that power is waning, and it's been waning, really for 10 or 15 years now. And so can we stabilize the system in a way that still maintains some of these core elements, rule-based, liberalism-based, without American hegemony? And so Ukraine becomes a test case of whether or not you can put together a coalition of liberal states that are going to uphold this principle. It's not just going to be the US. So it's the US, it's Europe, but it's even Australia and Japan and Singapore. So I think it's important that we not yield on the principle. And I know you agree with that. So I would really want to, that is where we want to end. We want to end with the lesson that this does not work. I'm a little bit more willing to push hard. Russia is being isolated. They are suffering a huge cost. Now, what you're expressing is the absolutely inevitable reality that there has to be a negotiation at some point. Neither side is powerful enough to win completely. This war is not going to end like World War II. And so what I would say to you is, let the Ukrainians feel like they have achieved, enough. Let them push forward, because they are pushing forward. Let's help them, equalize the stakes a little bit. At some point, they will realize that there is a kind of stalemate. I don't think it's going to come for the next few months. But I think sometime next year, there will be a realization. And at that point, you have to have a negotiation. And in those negotiations, we become very important, because let's assume there's essentially a stalemate along, roughly speaking, what Russia took in 2014, 2015, but not what it has taken this year, that the Ukrainians are able to push back on much of that, though I don't think they'll be able to get all of it. And at that point, what the Russians want is a relaxation of sanctions. That we can give them. And so then the negotiation becomes, what would it take to relax sanctions? And will the Russians be willing to give? I think it's worth entering those negotiations, but I wouldn't want to do it at any point that might seem to legitimize the conquest, the annexation, not to mention the fairly brutal. I mean, if you look at the stories that are coming out, the Russians have engaged in practices that really take you back to World War II.